Where can you go buy a mining share in an exploration company that has $100 million spent, that's on the forefront of tier 1 discoveries, meaning the big ones that could make you really wealthy, and might be able to offer you 2 extra shares to go along for 3 rides versus 1 into one of the best bull markets in our lifetime, you know?
What I love to do is introduce the right people to the right people. I assemble the smartest people I can think of or reach out to carry that conversation, and that's exactly what I've done today.
Please give my panel a round of applause. Welcome.
What's up, guys? Jay Martin here, CEO of Cambridge House, and today I'm sitting down with Ivan Bebek, the chairman of Auryn Resources. Thanks for sitting down today, Ivan.
Thanks so much for having me.
So this week I published a report on Auryn Resources to my newsletter subscribers. And if you're not a newsletter subscriber, you can always do so. Just hit the pinned comment right beneath this video. But I wanted to make sure you got some face time with our YouTube following, because a lot of them know who you are. Because in January, I published a video that we recorded from our VRIC conference in Vancouver. And during that event, arguably the most legendary mining entrepreneur in the business, Ross Beatty, got up on stage in front of a packed hall of 1,500 people and called you out specifically.
You're only allowed to invest in 3 brands, 3 people in the business, and you can't invest in yourself. Who are your 3 go-to guys?
Ivan Bebek, who runs Auryn Resources. He's a really smart, lovely guy. He's done well. You know, these are the kind of guys I'd back.
As being his favorite entrepreneur in the mining business, with Auryn being one of his top picks. I don't know if there's a more bullish statement that could be made about you. That's a high compliment.
It's definitely an honor, and Ross is someone I got to know quite well during our last success, which was selling Caden. Legendary mine finder, and sold, I think, about 12 or 14 companies, and has made more money for shareholders than most of the billionaires in the space. And so I have a lot of respect for Ross, leverage off a lot of really good advice that he's given me. But if you know Ross well, he shoots with a rifle when he makes investments. He's very specific, where some guys will do well, they'll shoot with a shotgun and buy everything. And this is something that I really respect with him. And when he made the compliment on stage, I wasn't in the audience, I was busy working. You know, I think the work ethic around myself and my company is really what's driven our successes. We kind of are a tenacious group. We have a lot of drive, a lot of ambition, and we swing really big. You know, it's exciting. I think I fantasize about exploration on a daily basis more than most, and I'm not afraid to go do it, because we've got some of the best guys we could find to go find these major mines. But no, Ross is a class gentleman, and you know, trying to be more like him every day.
You're a young man in this industry, in the mining industry. If you look at your resume, you'd seem exceptionally young, considering the things you've accomplished. You've got 2 big success stories where you've generated significant returns for your shareholders. So before we jump into Auryn and the copper story, can you just highlight real, what were you doing prior to Auryn?
Sure. First company came together in 2005 called Auryn Resources. I met a gentleman by the name of Sean Wallace, worked at Hunter Dickinson. I was working for a legendary mine finder named Dr. Roman Shkolenka. And we both learned from 2 different perspectives of finding big mines around the world, 2 different mining camps. And we woke up one day and said, you know, let's go do this ourselves, see if we can go find a 5 million ounce gold mine. Shortly after we started Auryn Resources, we found a 5 million ounce gold mine in Africa. Spent about 6 years of my life going back and forth there with Sean, and stock went to $9 a share, about $900 million market cap, the last bull market. And one thing we did really well was we funded it, raised a few $100 million during that run up to $9, which actually built the mine during the downturn of the bear market. And so today, it's a producing gold mine, plus 200,000, close to 250,000 ounces a year in Africa, in Ghana, and it's the second best success we were looking for.
Right.
What we wanted to do was go find a mine, you know, live that discovery curve, because that's the most amount of money you'll ever make in a mining investment, is through discovery, and then sell it to another company, and that led us into Caden. Sean kept running Keegan. I went and spearheaded Caden as a CEO. And took what we learned at Caden. We met some Newmont geologists along the way that were incredible guys. They were evaluating Caden for Newmont. They were regarded as gold ninjas. Michael Hendrickson and Dave Smithson, these 2 guys now in their mid-40s, were global structural geologists with the global mapper, but they were running the Ahafo program for Newmont, which went from 8 to 30 million ounces of gold. You know, we started Caden. got into a great project in Mexico. Shortly after, we took some really good advice from them, and they started working with us, and Agnico Eagle came along and bought us for $205 million, which springboarded us in 2014 amidst the bear market to a really big, financial return. Not just within the share price. A year before the sale, it was around 70 cents. It was bought around 360, and then Agnico doubled if you held us for a year longer.
Okay.
And so it was a pretty substantial win because there was only 100 drill holes. There was no official resource, and what the guys from Newmont did was the quality of organization in the science that they applied made it really easy for Agnico to understand the data and believe in it the way we did. It also, they helped us assemble a much bigger picture, the district, and that's what was missing in Keegan. We didn't own all the land around Keegan, and that's why Newmont never bought it back in the day when they reviewed it.
Okay.
So we learned a lot, and we found a really good synergy with these two gentlemen, and then we went and we started Auryn. And basically coming to Auryn, we said, look, we've done this twice. We've done well financially. Our shareholders have done very well, and we are large shareholders. That's something that's very important to us. And how can we knock this out of the park and do something legendary? Let's go find a 10, 20, 30 million ounce gold discovery or multiple ones. What can we find? We have money, we have a following, we're in the midst of the bear market. What can we do? I took a little bit of a detour in the start because I had a lot of capacity, a huge following from people with Caden, and I knew the guys at Gold Standard very well.
Okay.
And so I met with John Auden and his partner there and got involved with them around 50 cents. I think we bought about 18 million shares of that company, and then the North Dark Star happened and went to $3 to $4, and that was a great win. As that was happening, Auryn started to get more grounds. Sean, my partner, got into a project called Committee Bay, which is one of my favorite gold swings on the planet, and I'll talk about that a little later.
Sure.
But we swung really big. We thought big. The risk of going and finding a 1 or 2 million ounce deposit is the same risk as finding a 10 or 20 million ounce deposit. The difference is the amount of money you're going to need, the amount of courage, the amount of tenacity, and the amount of time and waiting power that you're going to need to go find the big one.
Right.
And I think that in the bear market, a lot of people feel, as the common thing, is that these big mines have all been found. All the easy ones sticking out of the ground were found in the last 20 years.
Sure.
Because 20 billion went into exploration. We're finding things that were either difficult for somebody else or that people have completely overlooked. New ideas. And these are new discoveries, which are the kind that can make us that legendary return in our share price for our investors. And that's how kind of Auryn came together.
But now with Auryn, you've switched the focus to copper, and I know you have some gold and silver as well, but the dominant driving force behind the share price has probably been the Sombrero project in Peru. So just talk about the demand a little bit. What are the primary drivers of copper demand for, say, the next decade?
Sure.
Why is this a good bet?
Great question. Electrification.
Yeah.
Green planet. If you believe in a greener earth, you have to believe in copper. The electric vehicle, this is a pretty cool stat that I've learned, and I can completely always point back towards 2.2% of the world is driving EV vehicles right now. And if you go to 5%, there will be no copper left in any copper mine on the planet. The projection in 10 years from now, in 2030, is to be at 7% saturation of electric vehicles, which is our copper supply, right?
Right.
And so there's going to be a massive supply-demand factor. New infrastructure. If you travel anywhere in the world, and I've traveled a lot in my career, there's cranes everywhere. Things are not only getting built, and cities are expanding, the population has doubled in the last 30 years, but the renovation of the planet, new infrastructure, is overdue in the US. It's overdue all over the place. China's coming online, India's coming online. So anytime you think of an electronic device, a light switch, an iPhone, a computer, if you think of pipes, water, anything, copper is what you got to think about. And then if you look at what happened in the last bull market, every single mine that could be built to go produce copper was funded and built. And a lot of those mines have been producing. It takes 15 to 20 years to bring a copper mine online. And there isn't many in the pipeline, and the demand is skyrocketing. I've seen a chart of like the 50-year call on copper price, and it's a hockey stick. We all know that with Canada.
Yeah.
And basically, because our whole planet is becoming a lot more electric, the demand's going to go off the charts. And so that's been a massive driver for copper.
Right. I think, well, yeah, last year Elon Musk was tweeting about the global shortage, like a warning, the global shortage for copper. But inevitably somebody watching the videos heading down to the comments right now to say, sure guys, but there's a global pandemic happening. Global economy is at a standstill. It's going to decrease the demand for all commodities, including copper. What do you have to say to that?
Well, I'll start by saying copper's up 32% in 2.5 months. It's at 264 as we're doing this interview right now, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's performing. Why is it performing during a pandemic when this is happening? Well, a couple things. One is, if you followed Peru, which is the number 2 copper producer, I believe Chile as well is number 1, okay. A lot of the copper mines were put on care and maintenance during COVID. And so we've had an interruption in supply. Understood? Makes sense? The construction never stopped. The construction has not stopped in the US. It went all through
That's
COVID,
right.
all through pandemic. So, I think there's a factor in automotive industries and stuff like that. People weren't buying cars. There's going to be an impact. There's definitely been a disruption. But forgetting on my exact fact or theory into this person that's going to make that comment, it's up 32% in 2.5 months through this pandemic, as all these predictions are going to be that things are going to slow down. Mm-hmm. I've heard of...
Has that surprised you at all? Or is that the plan?
I would say that I was ambitious that copper was going to hold in there. I was surprised it held $2 a pound. If I listened to the critics, copper, when we hit that peak financial crisis, the drop in the Dow down to
mid-March.
Yeah, I would have thought it went down to $1.50 or less, but it held. Seeing the construction stay, it made me a lot more confident that the demand is going to continue and the disruption in the mines was going to be, impactful as well. So where I'm at now with my surprise or appreciation towards it, no, I think the copper demand, the giant beast that's coming for all this future being electric. I mean, we heard a lot about how impactful the pollution is or isn't when we shut down and lock down everything. They were showing satellite pictures of cities that are densely populated that had no pollution.
Sure.
That is the case for more electric vehicles consuming tons of copper on the road. I think that the copper demand long term is far greater than we are anticipating, and we're keeping calm about it right now so prices don't go off the charts until more mines are found.
Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the supply a little bit. So we've covered the demand. We agree it's going to increase, but how is that demand being met today?
Well, demand's being met. I mean, there's a handful of mines that were built a decade ago, and those mines are supplying the current demand. But we're not standing still. We're moving forward. There's trillions and trillions of dollars that are going into stimulus packages that are going to go into infrastructure projects. There's going to be a wave of demand coming to the copper world, and we're going to hit a supply crunch, I believe in 2021 was when. Maybe it's 2022.
Okay.
But within 1 to 2 years in the copper world, as a copper investor, that's a short time frame because everything trades at a future. The cost of these mines is going up because the grade of these mines are going down. But there isn't many new copper discoveries coming online, not enough to supply that going forward. So I think demand stays steady. I think you're seeing the lockdowns lift globally. We're seeing them in Europe, we're seeing them in the US, and I think eventually we're turning back on the electric cars and the electrification of the planet.
Right.
And so I think it was a short window. I don't think it was long enough to be punishing towards the demand.
Right.
I think demand resumes quickly and it complements the construction demand that never went away.
Yeah, I think you're right. We're very resilient as a species. Case in point, mid-pandemic, last week, the US launched their first shuttle into orbit in, I think, a decade, right? Awesome. I want to dig into Auryn a little bit, and why don't we start in Peru with Sombrero?
Okay, so Sombrero came to us by a gentleman by the name of Miguel Cardozo. And if you haven't heard of Miguel Cardozo, he's credited with the discovery of Yanacocha as a gold deposit versus a silver deposit, which is how it started. 60 million ounces later, it's a 60 million ounce gold epithermal deposit. It's the largest epithermal deposit on the planet. And his story was unique. He was tasked there by Newmont to go and kill it. And he actually came back with, no, boss, we should drill underneath that big hill of silica over there, and that's where the mine ended up being. Miguel was our introduction into Peru, and he had some great ideas, and we listened. Our colleagues, Michael Henriksen, Dave Smithson, they had worked with Miguel or knew of him quite well from the Newmont days when they were at Newmont. And Miguel had this idea at Sombrero which is located on a belt that has a famous mine called Las Bambas. It's actually the 10th largest copper mine in the world. There's about 5 or 6 other mines that are all world class, would probably make top 20 mines in the world on that same belt as Las Bambas. And Miguel's theory was that the belt continued to the west for another 200 kilometers. And nobody had gone there because volcanoes erupted and they covered all the rocks with volcanic ash. So the government came through when they did their regional study, and they age dated the volcanic ash. The rocks were too young. They weren't the same age of rocks as the ones that hosted all these major mines. Miguel said, you know, there's probably the exact same deposits here as there is in the Las Bambas trend. We followed up on that. We started sampling 200 meters of 0.5, 0.6, 0.7 copper in several areas in our first target. We sampled up to 200 gram gold here. There's gold and copper here. The biggest difference between our trend, the western half of this belt, and the one where all the major mines occur is we have copper and gold, and those are predominantly copper and molybdenum base metal oriented mines. By scale and by footprint of what we've explored in the last 2 years, our northern part of our project is equivalent, and this is only 5% of our 130,000 hectares, it's equivalent to the same scale as a Las Bambas. So the only thing we don't know about this project yet is the end grade. Las Bambas averages 0.6% copper equivalent, copper molybdenum equivalent.
Sure.
If you take the 4,000 samples we've taken, soils, rocks, or whatever we've done, we're 0.61%, so we're the same grade, which leads us to believe that we're going to be in the same realm. But our situation is much better because the infrastructure is amazing. It's a dream.
Okay.
And when you talk about a big copper gold mine, which is what this could be, you got to talk about infrastructure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So power lines, since we've owned the property, mine power has been put right over top of the property, 500 kilovolt power lines. You take a highway to the property with about 5 or 10 minutes of a dirt road to the actual targets. We joke about plugging in an extension cord to run the mine into these power lines when we actually get there. The geometry can work against you. If your copper mine's at the bottom of a valley, you're in trouble. It's actually gently sloping. It's a dream type of scenario for that from a geometry perspective. And the communities we impact, huge part. And this is very important for people to know about Peru. Peru's the #2 copper producer. It's slow to get permits, and your biggest risk in Peru is the communities.
Sure.
We've done this in Africa. We've done this in Mexico with our second company. What we did here was we came in with a theme, action before words, because the last bull market, people came into Peru, gave the communities a bunch of money, drilled their holes, ran their stocks, left, and the money was spent right away, and there was nothing left for the few years while the land was occupied, really. It was very modest, right?
Right.
We came in, and between money we've spent and money we've raised, we're almost $1 million so far, including relief efforts we've helped out with during COVID.
Awesome.
And this is before our first drill permit, before our first drill hole. Finding a mine and making shareholders rich is one thing, and it's very, very important. That's our MO. But the other half of the equation is making sure you leave a very sustainable, positive footprint in people's lives that you're going to impact. You know, we're humanitarians as much as we're looking to find copper, which is the green metal that solves, you know, global warming or helps with more electric vehicles.
Sure.
But then also for the shareholders to benefit on the value that we can create. So if you think about Sombrero, you've got to think we're competing to find the 10th largest mine in the world. We're an analog to Las Bambas. That's 5% of the property. There's 5 other targets we've identified. Some are pure gold, some are big copper ones that we haven't got to yet because of COVID.
Right.
But we're about to get access to them, and literally by the end of June, we'll be sampling all of these new targets.
Okay, I was curious because Peru got hit quite hard.
It is, and it still is. We applied for approvals to go back to work. We met all the protocols, and so now we'll get a certificate to actually carry on us to show that we've passed all the protocols to go back to work. And as of June 22nd, we will be working full time. And so what frustrated me before COVID happened was we started finding new things, big things that are obvious with tons of copper or big gold targets in the belt. The other half of the belt that we've got, besides the big Las Bambas-esque target that we have that we've all talked about, we've permitted for drilling, we've walked and sampled on copper and gold for 2 days over this thing. And so now we get to resume work and show everybody the other half of the belt, what we have along this belt.
Right.
And if you look at the Las Bambas trend, if you compare it, there's 5 or 6 of these world-class mines We have only talked about the first potential world-class mine, and we're going to find similar 4 or 5 more down this trend is what we believe we're going to have by the end of the summer.
Okay.
And we'll be permitting to drill, sometime late this year or early next year on the other targets, right?
Okay. So end of the summer. So what do you have to say to prospective investors who may be waiting for a price correction early summer before they buy in?
Sombrero is one of 3 tier 1, meaning world-class swings that we have in our portfolio. We have 2 other ones, Committee Bay up north, and we have this thing called Curibaya in Peru that's just ridiculous, multi-kilo silver everywhere and multi-gram gold everywhere, where we're going to go and try and target the source. What we are thinking about now as a company is how do we unlock all this value across these 3 major projects of one company? What happens before we get these drill permits? Do you sell now and buy us closer towards drill permits, or do you wait? Well, our thoughts are the best way to unlock value when you have standalone projects would be to split the company into 2 or 3 entities, 1 per tier 1 swing. And we've given that strong consideration. I've talked publicly about that as an idea, but there's a few key fundamentals we'd have to consider before we did that.
Okay. I was curious about that because, and wondering how much inspiration you've pulled from Ross Beatty. He did that with Lumina.
Yes.
I know you watched that happen, and I've heard you say you've always wanted to be a shareholder of a company that did that split, and now I know that's in the vision, right?
Yeah. Well, I actually asked Ross, what do you think this is the plan to do that? And, his response was, it's a brilliant idea. I did it, and it worked out really well. And, the difference here is we're a bit more exploration based.
Sure.
Which I like personally. I like exploration because the curve is really steep if we get these things right. He said, just do you have conviction on each project enough to have them standalone? And most certainly do. The 2 key fundamentals that I want to make sure we have locked down hard is we need a captain per company.
Okay.
I plan to obviously be the quarterback for a lot of it, but I can't be the captain on each one. And so people is a major factor. We found a person that meet the top tier thresholds to carry those 2 companies.
You've got a captain for each ship.
I have
right
2
now.
captains that we're working towards that would be amazing for each of these other entities.
Okay.
And then the second one is commodity prices. You want to do this at the forefront of a bull market. So as I saw Ross do this with Lumina Copper, is he did it at the right time, right before the copper market took off. And he just started monetizing each one after each one in a row, right? Tremendous success. And so in our case, if you split the 3 assets all onto their own and they all have a chance to succeed, if you're a shareholder today and just one of them works out, you've made your home run with us. If 2 of them work out, you've made 2 home runs with us. If 3 of them work out, I've always joked this way, but I said there'll be a book and a movie just because we're playing the odds of exploration. We're trying to reduce the risk. We've identified more to go with some of these things that we would spin out. So, I think to do this intelligently and to do it in a way that would make a lot of money for shareholders would be to do it with the most confidence and to have other things strengthen each one of these assets once we split them into 3, and again, finding the captains, people is everything. That's how it works for us.
Yeah.
We have the shareholder base, we have the ability to finance everything we're talking about, and each one is offering that 10, 20 times your money kind of return if we get it right. We're at a very mature stage in our business plan. We spent $100 million putting a business plan together to try and find the world's biggest mine. Now we're going to go execute on that business plan in the next 12 to 18 months. And it will be in all 3 of these swings.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. With Committee Bay, it's in Canada, in Nunavut. What can shareholders expect in the next year up there? So
Committee Bay, just a refresher, 300 kilometer long gold trend. Right next to Amaruq. It's about 6 million ounce of 6 grams in the Arctic, which Agnico operates. Also next to Meliadine, 11 million ounces, I think plus 7 or 8 grams per ton. This is a part of the planet where some of the biggest and the richest gold deposits are being discovered or being mined. And geopolitically, it's awesome. It's remote though. It's the Arctic. It's none of it. Yeah. So people have always been very skeptical about going up there, and this is where the opportunity lied. We acquired a company that used to be worth $200 million last bull market for $18 million, and they had $30 million of infrastructure at our Committee Bay project. We then went into it with our own money, and we did $60 million of work, and we sampled the entire 300 kilometers, and we drilled about 276 holes. Now for a trend that long, that's barely scratching the surface, unfortunately. There's a lot more work to be done. But we did it with some of the world's best scientists we could find. We brought in artificial intelligence. Our technical team is very innovative, and they're always looking for ways to increase the odds of discovery. Last year, we made a huge breakthrough, and what we were trying to figure out was the geometry. Are these things steeply dipping, or are they more horizontal? And we thought they were more steeply dipping, and something triggered our geologist through the conductivity study with electrical currents into the ground of conductive rocks or magnetics, and they came out with a unique signal, and then they started applying it to these 17 targets along the trend that we've previously drilled, and we started seeing, when we thought things were like this, and we drilled here, we realized they were like this, and this is where the target was. We weren't far off.
Okay.
We were drilling the smoke of what could be these really big discoveries that we were after. So for Committee Bay, hard learning. It's changed for us every year. It's gotten better. Our threshold to go there was $1,300 gold, and we're $400 above that right now today as I sit here with you. I think next year gold's probably well through $2,000 an ounce. That is a bull market project. And what I mean by that is it's the kind of mine that could get built in today's gold price and the gold price that's coming. And it would be a very, very robust mine. We're looking for 3 or 4, 5 to 10 million ounce discoveries, 6 or 7 grams per ton up there. So that being said, Committee Bay has come back to life. It's my favorite gold project on the planet to go drill because it's got scale and it's got longevity of discovery and it's in a geopolitical great place, and the gold price is only going to get better from this point forward in my opinion.
Okay, now real quick, I also want you to touch on your silver project in southern Peru, Curibaya.
Curibaya, so piece of ground, we had a third of it. 2/3 was owned, one third was owned by Teck, and the other third was owned by a Australian-Peruvian mining company. Teck tried to do a deal with them, they couldn't. We tried to do a deal with them, they couldn't. They told us they had this big silver mine. And so we went away for about 3 years until they went bankrupt, but they had amalgamated Teck's land position, and then they ran out of money. The Australian junior that owned it became a hearing aid company, and so we called them up and said, hey, look, can we buy those claims off you? And I like to think we stole it for $250,000 and got them. Now we have the consolidated 3 different pieces that you needed to make this a proper project. Send the guys out, and they started sampling veins everywhere. And we're talking like 8 kilo, 14 kilo, 10 kilo, 12 kilo, 13, 8, all over the place, silver veins. And then also gold veins. You know, I think out of 40 samples, they're 2 grams to 40 grams gold. So really, really high grade silver and gold. And the way it works there in the model, it's quite simple. There's these domes, so underground volcanoes that the tops have blown off, but there's these domes that come up. And each of these domes has veins radiating out of them. And these veins are carrying multi-kilo silver, multi-gram gold. If you're following breadcrumbs in the exploration world of multi-kilo silver to a potential source, you might find something big. It is on the trend of some of the biggest mines in Peru, Quellaveco, Cerro Verde. These are some of the biggest copper gold mines in Peru, porphyries. It's also on the border of some of the big epithermal discoveries as well. So its address is on the major scale. So you have ridiculous grade of silver, predominantly silver, ridiculous grade of gold, and you're on the trend of some of the biggest mines in the world, but also in Peru. So it ranks as something that I know is going to get a lot better. We don't have much more work to do before we drill it.
Okay.
Permits here, different part of Peru, a lot less elaborate to get permits here. From the day we file, it's probably 3 to 4 months to actually have a drill permit in hand.
Okay.
We get back to work on it here probably in July with a plan to be able to drill it in Q4. That's our ambition.
Okay.
And so, but this is spectacular. If you said, have you ever seen something with high grade like silver and gold on it, you know, in your career over such a big area with so many different areas that you could go drill and find it? No, I have not. I've never seen this much high grade on a project, and I've looked at a lot. So it has grade, which is king, and it has scale opportunities, which is also really substantial. So it's a true swing, and there'll be more added to Curibaya, but it's an awesome opportunity for us.
Okay, are you guys going to have to finance anytime soon?
No, we're good. Right now we're fully funded, and you know, we don't have money for drilling, but we have money for general working capital, all the pre-targeting work we're going to do around Sombrero, all the work we're going to do at Curibaya. We have enough money to give us 2 years of G&A, so we don't need money until we get drill permits. And if you watch the performance of our companies and how they work right before a drill program, I mean, these aren't small discoveries if we make them. They're going to generate a lot of speculation before we go drill them. So once we get permits to get capital at that point, a little bit of money for drilling, I think the share price and the currency will be spectacular because we'll be on the eve of drilling, and that's where we'd look to do it. So no money's needed. There's no financings planned. If we do split our company into three, I think that there's still no additional funds needed right away unless there's something being drilled, which is the most fortuitous time to go drill. But there's a lot of capital available for each of these projects. It's been offered to us continuously, so we're not afraid of that. We're just really anti-dilutive, and we're going to push for a very good currency before we go fund these things so we can protect our shareholder base.
Okay, awesome. Now, Ivan, you're one of the entrepreneurs that I see in the mining space who's also super active on the shareholder communication front. You're always marketing. I say that because it seems to me you're always on the road.
I'm a huge shareholder, and I respect the shareholders. I treat this company as a very large shareholder. I want to see the best performing share price I can as a shareholder. Now, I don't sell my shares until I sell the company. So I'm in it for the long run. But all the people that support us, Ross Beatty, Rob Sally, people we've mentioned before, our friends, family, all the people that give us support, they deserve the world stage. And if we get it right, we don't want to go to $10 a share. We want to go to $40 a share. So I'm going to do my best to make sure the whole world is paying attention to things that could become one of the top 20 mines in the world. That's the audience we are trying to create for our shareholder base. It all comes down to performance. We're in this business to make money, right? And I want to make everybody rich, not just money. I probably work 14 hours a day, and I'm always driving forward, and I'm not satisfied with our current share price. I think there's a lot of value being missed across our portfolio. We've talked about Sombrero, we've talked about Committee Bay, and we've talked about Curibaya. We have another project called Homestake Ridge in BC. Did a study on it recently. PEA said it's worth $175 million at $1,650 gold, US after tax. At $1,300, it's worth 100 and change US. It makes up most of our market cap, right? So if you ask me here today, what are you getting valued for? Are you getting full value for all your projects? No, I'm getting valued for maybe one right now. And so this comes down to my frustration with our share price and the performance and the opportunity of what we can offer shareholders. If we split it into three, and I need everyone to think about this, where can you go buy a mining share in an exploration company that has $100 million spent, that's on the forefront of tier one discoveries, meaning the big ones that could make you really wealthy, and might be able to offer you 2 extra shares to go along for 3 rides versus 1 into one of the best bull markets in our lifetime. Time is the enemy, but it's also something we've paid a lot of. It takes time to find big things. We spent 4 years getting this to the point where it is now, and we're at that flexion point, I'd say within 12 months from as we sit here today, to where we can actually see the fruits of our labors, to see these discoveries finally getting drilled and possibly getting made, and the mining market or the actual commodity prices are participating exactly in concert with what we're doing. So, it's exciting for me, and I don't think I can market enough until the share price gets a lot higher and we make the discovery and then we take it to the next level.
Well, it seems easy for you. I can hear the passion when you're talking about your projects. Look, you're a super busy guy. I appreciate you sitting down today, and super excited to watch what happens with Auryn.